This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
Hello, and welcome back to the GSMC Sports Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Alex Masferrer. I am really excited to be doing this show for you guys today. But before I start talking anything, I want to remind you guys to please subscribe to the podcast. We really appreciate it. Also, leave a 5-star review. We would appreciate that as well. Also, don't forget to follow us on social media, on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, whatever you're on social media-wise, we are on as well. I hope wherever you are listening from, you and your family are happy and healthy during these times. We have an amazing show for you guys today. Later on in the show, I'm going to be talking about some Aaron Rodgers, putting on my tinfoil hat, and maybe predicting where he could finish his career, because I do not believe he will finish his NFL career as a Green Bay Packer. Also later on in the show, I'm going to be giving you some players, some NBA players, with the most to prove in this playoffs when the season resumes July 30th. Also, I'm going to wrap up the show. Our final segment will be predicting the entire NBA playoffs, each round, who I believe will come out of the East, the West, who will win multiple series, who will get bounced in the first round. The entire NBA playoffs I will predict on the last segment of the show today, so make sure you stick around for that. But I want to start off today's show with no one else but the man himself, Tom Brady, the greatest of all time. A local TV station, a local TV news station in Tampa Bay, caught some footage of Tom Brady working out with his new Buccaneers teammates in a private facility at a private high school in the Tampa Bay area, completely closed off from the public. There were no fans, and actually the only way they were able to get this footage was through a helicopter, which is really classic Tom Brady, always trying to hide stuff, always trying to work out in secret, work out in private. But it's no surprise to me that Tom Brady's working with his new teammates, before the season even starts, obviously with social distancing as well. But it's no surprise to me with this whole coronavirus thing. There's not going to be, a true traditional training camp, most likely. If there is going to be any, rookie camps, mini camps, they're probably going to be delayed. And we probably won't see on-field NFL workouts until, late July, maybe even August, before we actually see some on-field participation of these NFL players in a traditional training camp fashion. So it's no surprise to me that Tom Brady, relocating to a new city, new teammates, new coach, wants to get some work in early with as many teammates as possible. When you look at the video, you can clearly see Rob Gronkowski's there. I thought I also saw some Mike Evans. It's obviously some sky cam. It's hard to view. I thought I saw Rob Gronkowski, Mike Evans, a ton of offensive linemen. It was a really cool video to see. Brady actually kind of messed around and pretended to play center for a couple minutes there because he knew the helicopter was watching. But this video really got me thinking. I really wanted to, look at this Tampa Bay Buccaneers roster. And it really hit me. Is this the best offensive weapons that Tom Brady has ever been surrounded with in his 20-year NFL career so far? So I looked back at some Patriot rosters, and I wanted to see which one of them had the best offensive weapons around Tom Brady. And I settled on the 2007 undefeated Patriots. That offense was one of the best offenses in NFL history. The Patriots obviously went 16-0 that year before losing in the Super Bowl to the New York Giants. But Tom Brady that year had a career year. He threw for 4,806 yards, 50 touchdowns, only 8 interceptions. Absolutely ridiculous numbers. That was probably the greatest Tom Brady year statistically wise when you just look at it on paper, which is why I chose this offense. He was surrounded by incredible talent from the wide receiver core all the way down. That team also had a great defense as well. So I want to compare some of the positional groups on the offense and see, is this Tampa Bay Buccaneers roster have more offensive weapons than the 2007 New England Patriots? So let's start with the running back room. Kevin Falk at age 31 was the main running back for that team. It wasn't really a running offense. It was way more pass heavy. So he only had 265 yards and no touchdowns, actually. He had a receiving touchdown, though. For the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, that's compared to Ronald Jones, who actually had a fantastic season last year, I believe only in his second year in the league. He had 724 yards and 6 touchdowns, which is pretty incredible for a young back, very serviceable. So I would actually edge out Ronald Jones II going into his third season in the NFL than how Kevin Falk did in 2007. Now let's move on to the wide receivers, which is obviously the most talented positional group for both of these teams, the 2007 Patriots and the current Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Randy Moss obviously headlined the 2007 Patriots. He had 1,493 yards, 23 touchdowns, NFL record. Absolutely ridiculous stuff. I don't know if anyone's ever going to break that 23 touchdown record. Some people might come close, but the fact that a single receiver, can catch 23 touchdowns is absolutely ridiculous, and you really see why Tom Brady threw 50 touchdowns that year. Second in that wide receiver group was Wes Welker, who had 1,175 yards and 8 touchdowns. So Tom Brady was lucky enough in that 2007 season, well, really because of Tom Brady as well, where he had 2 wide receivers who had over 1,000 yards, which does not happen often in the NFL. Now let's go to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who actually also had 2 1,000-yard receivers. None of them quite at Randy Moss level, but at Wes Welker level for sure. So Mike Evans last year, who is widely considered, at least in my opinion, a top 5 receiver in the league, and even though he had a little bit of a down year last year statistic-wise, I still think he's a top 5 receiver, and he is the best receiver on this Tampa Bay Buccaneer team. He had 1,157 yards and 8 touchdowns. Keep in mind that's going against the best receiver every single week in, week out, which are absolutely incredible numbers. And Chris Godwin last year actually had a breakout season. He was actually statistically better than Mike Evans was last year. He had 86 catches for 1,333 yards and 9 touchdowns. I don't know who I would give this to. I think I would slightly give it to the 2007 New England Patriots because of how good Randy Moss was that season. But this Tampa Bay Buccaneers wide receiving core is an extremely close second by about a hair in comparison to some of the best offensive weapons Tom Brady has ever played with. Keep in mind also that these are different wide receivers. So Tom Brady in 2007 was throwing the ball deep to Randy Moss, and Wes Welker was a real slot guy, like a receptions machine. That's different in Tampa Bay. Mike Evans is kind of a do-it-all receiver. He's big, he's tall, he's fast. He can run every route in the route tree. He's the clear number 1 receiver. While Chris Godwin's actually more of a speed demon, more of a Tyreek Hill type, going to burn you down the field, take the top off the defense. And it's going to be interesting to see, Chris Godwin really benefited from Jameis Winston, who was the quarterback for the Bucs last year, throwing the ball down the field constantly, not afraid to throw interceptions. Tom Brady isn't like that. Tom Brady has been more, at least recently, of a dink and dunk type quarterback. Get the ball out quick, don't take sacks, don't turn the ball over, don't take huge risks. Is that going to see, a slight decline in Chris Godwin's numbers? I think it will. I think Chris Godwin's numbers will only go down. Not a huge amount, not because to any fault of his own, of any lack of talent or a loss in a step or something like that. Just on how the system is going to work. I think Mike Evans' numbers will go up again. I expect double-digit touchdowns from him. Closer, instead of 67 catches like last year, probably more in the high 70s, low 80s catches. Similar yards, and like I said before, double-digit touchdowns. Again, Chris Godwin's numbers could go down slightly just because of the offensive talent, and I do expect a little bit of a scheme change in the Tampa Bay Buccaneers offense versus the vertical passing game they had last year. I think that will be a little bit different this year, a little bit more adapted, a little bit more get the ball out quick like I mentioned. Now let's get to the tight end group. And this one isn't really close. This one is definitely for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers offense this way. For the 2007 Patriots, they had Kyle Brady and Ben Watson. 2 nice tight ends, nothing special, nothing great. Kyle Brady had 70 yards, 2 touchdowns. Ben Watson had about 400 yards and 6 touchdowns. Last year, O.J. Howard, who obviously might be traded. There's been some rumors of that, but nothing has formulated yet. So I actually expect him to be on the team next year. O.J. Howard last year had 34 catches for 460 yards and a touchdown. The quote-unquote backup tight end, they really ran 2 tight ends in Tampa Bay last year, is Cameron Brate, who had 4 touchdowns last year as well. He was a big red zone target. And obviously, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Tom Brady dragged Rob Gronkowski out of retirement. He is now a Tampa Bay Buccaneer as well. And while the last we saw of Gronk wasn't great, he seemed beat up, he seemed tired, he seemed I think like he mentioned in his interview, he wasn't having fun playing football. The Patriots really didn't ask him to do a whole lot his last year in New England. He wasn't this unguardable mismatch machine that we've all known and loved Rob Gronkowski to be. But instead, the Patriots that last year asked him to be big in moments. He had that big catch in the Super Bowl. He had that big touchdown in Kansas City that same year. The Super Bowl catch I was referencing was against the Rams, obviously, in his final season. The game before that, the huge catch in the AFC Championship game against the Chiefs. It's going to be really interesting to see what Rob Gronkowski is going to be. He's obviously thinned out. We've seen it. He said he's going to bulk up. He says he's in great shape. He's still working out. We obviously saw Rob Gronkowski is still shredded to the max if you watched any WWE when he was on as well. He's in Tampa, Florida. Like I mentioned, I saw him in the video that the news footage captured. He's working with Tom Brady. It wouldn't surprise me, actually, if Rob Gronkowski... Actually, I'm almost expecting Rob Gronkowski to look better than he did the final year of the Patriots with his first year here in Tampa Bay. I definitely don't expect Rob Gronkowski to return to that 2011 form or that 2012 form where Rob Gronkowski was, the greatest mismatch, arguably, of all time, NFL-wise, greatest tight end of all time. But I do expect Rob Gronkowski to be more than he was that last year in New England. Like I mentioned, that last year in New England, they just asked him to be big in moments. I think there's going to be a little bit more consistency from Rob Gronkowski, especially since, like I mentioned before, it was shortened training camps, probably lack of preseason, lack of reps. Tom Brady's going to want a security blanket, and he's going to want a security blanket, especially early in this NFL season while he's still adapting to these new receivers. And Rob Gronkowski is 100% going to be that guy. He's worked with Gronk for years and years. They're great friends off the field. He knows where Gronkowski is going to be on the field. Gronk will catch anything that's near him. So I would actually expect Rob Gronkowski to return to form in somewhat. I don't think he's going to be the best tight end in the league. I don't think he might even be a top 3 tight end in the league next year, but a top 7, top 5 tight end, I think that's definitely an achievable goal for Rob Gronkowski next year, and it would help Tom Brady out a lot. Now let's go to the coaching staff. Obviously, Bill Belichick was the head coach for the 2007 New England Patriots, but I'm leaving him off this because he's more of a defensive head coach and doesn't have a lot of input on the offense. Josh McDaniels was the head coach of the 2007 Patriots, either after this year or the year after he left to go coach Tim Tebow and the Denver Broncos. But nevertheless, in 2007, he was the offensive coordinator for the Patriots, running this incredible offense. For the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, obviously their head coach is Bruce Arians, who's more of an offensive head coach, and their offensive coordinator is Brian Leftwich, who is a former NFL quarterback, and a lot of people consider him to be a rising star in the coaching world. I'm obviously not going to say that this coaching staff is better than the 2007 New England Patriots coaching staff, but I do think there's more offensive creativity on this coaching staff than there is with the 2007 offensive coaching staff for the Patriots. Bruce Arians has always been a vertical passing game type of guy, and I don't know if I necessarily expect to change that. I think there will be more vertical passing game in this Buccaneers offense than we've seen of Tom Brady really since 2007, where he threw the ball downfield a lot. I do think Tom Brady will throw the ball downfield more this year than he has in years past, but I don't think this passing game is just going to be strictly a vertical offense like it was last year for Tampa Bay with Jameis Winston. I think there will be some more slants, there will be some more out routes, more dink and dunk 5 to 7 yard games, get the ball out quickly, kind of kill the defense with 1,000 paper cuts type of thing. I do think we'll see a good mix of both, which is why I'm so excited to see this Tampa Bay offense. Bruce Arians, obviously an outstanding offensive mind. Brian Leftwich seems to be an up-and-coming offensive, guru almost. Tom Brady, obviously, with all his experience, will want some input on the offense, and I think he'll definitely get it. So I think we're going to see a really cool blend of, dink and dunk Tom Brady, and also get a little bit of throwback 2007 vertical passing game Tom Brady as well, which is going to be incredible. I want to end this segment on how do I actually think Tom Brady will do. I think the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are going to be a playoff team, 100%. I expect them to win a minimum of 10 games. I believe their over-under, according to Vegas, is either 9.5 or 10. That seems like a perfect amount, 10 games for me. It wouldn't surprise me if they won the division, if the Saints took a step back. I think the Saints are really talented, obviously. NFC's a little harder, but 100% I believe the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are going to make the playoffs, and I would even put them in a Super Bowl contention tier, in my opinion. I don't know if they should be the favorites by any means to win the Super Bowl, but it would not surprise me at all. I don't want to bet against Tom Brady, and it wouldn't surprise me if Tom Brady led this team to the Super Bowl and potentially won it. Obviously, in 2007, with fantastic offensive weapons, he threw 50 touchdowns and 8 interceptions. Even though this Tampa Bay Buccaneers offense has surrounded him with a ton of talent, again, I don't think that Tom Brady's going to be able to replicate these numbers. Tom Brady last year with one of the most depleted offenses talent-wise in the league after Antonio Brown obviously left the New England Patriots. Josh Gordon actually also was cut by the New England Patriots. So once those two guys really left, we really saw Tom Brady's stats really begin to fall. So Tom Brady last year only threw for 4,057 yards, which is decent. 24 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. That's a pretty good touchdown-interception ratio, but that is definitely a down year for Tom Brady, to say the least. I expect those numbers to go up, yardage-wise, touchdown-wise, 100%. I could see Tom Brady throwing for maybe, if I had to predict, 4,300 yards. I think he'll actually get to 30 touchdowns. I think he'll get to about 32, 33 touchdowns this year. 8 interceptions seems about right for Tom Brady. So I do think those numbers will go up, surely because of talent. And while Tom Brady definitely did have a struggle to end last season with the New England Patriots, I think there were a lot of other factors there. I think his offensive roster got flipped on its head halfway through the season, again, with the loss of Antonio Brown, Josh Gordon, and instead he had to work with guys like Jacoby Myers more. Julian Edelman seemed to have, lost a step speed-wise. You don't want Julian Edelman being your number one receiver. N'Keal Harry was obviously still developing at the time. He wasn't a huge impact. But with this roster, this coaching creativity offensively, I really do think we're going to have a really fun Tom Brady offense, like I mentioned before, with a good blend of the vertical passing game and the dink and dunk as well, and I'm really excited to see it. So to wrap up quickly, Tom Brady's stats next year, I'm assuming a 4,300 yards, 33 touchdowns, 8 or 9 interceptions. Tampa Bay will be a playoff team. I don't think they're going to replicate the same success, obviously, as the 2007 Patriots, but it was a really fun comparison to see, is this more offensive talent than the 2007 Patriots? Is this the best offensive team Tom Brady has ever played with weapon-wise? And you can really make that argument, especially in certain, positional groups like tight end and running back. All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we get on the other side of the break, I'm going to be talking some Aaron Rodgers. He's another quarterback I do not believe will finish his career with his current team, the Green Bay Packers. On the other side of the break, I will be giving you some potential conspiracy theories on where he could finish his NFL career. Make sure you stick around for that as well. And don't forget, at the end of the episode, I will be breaking down and predicting the entire NBA playoffs. We will be right back after this break.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines. They got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
And we are back here at the GSMC Sports Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. Thank you so much for tuning in so far. I just got finished talking about Tom Brady and how I think he'll do, with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers this year, and comparing, this Buccaneers offense to the 2007 undefeated Patriots offense, seeing if this is, the best roster Tom Brady has played with offensively. And there's another quarterback that I think, similar to Tom Brady, will not end his career with the team he's been with for so long, and that's Green Bay Packer quarterback Aaron Rodgers. Now, I mentioned in my previous episode when I was doing a segment on, who's on the hot seat, who needs to, really nail it in a make it or break year. Surprisingly, I listed Aaron Rodgers because of the fact that they drafted Jordan Love. And, some of the points I made there were, head coach Matt LaFleur was talking about how this offense needs to take more risks and we need more playmaking, we need more dynamic plays. And Aaron Rodgers last year actually led the league in throwaways, which is crazy to think about considering he usually is that gunslinger, that crazy playmaker that we're so used to seeing. And, it's interesting. The Aaron Rodgers and Green Bay Packer, partnership has never really been incredible. It's never really been great. They've obviously won a Super Bowl together, but there's always constant turmoil, how Aaron Rodgers isn't a good enough leader. Aaron Rodgers doesn't get along with the head coach, specifically when Mike McCarthy was there. If you remember, I believe, almost a year ago, maybe even a year and a half ago, right after Mike McCarthy was relieved of his duties as the head coach of the Packers, a big article came out on Bleacher Report, with multiple sources saying, Mike McCarthy and Aaron never had a great relationship. They never worked well together. Mike McCarthy wanted to limit Aaron. So they brought in this head coach, Matt LaFleur, supposed to be this offensive, creative, genius type of guy. And it appears that their relationship isn't the greatest either. Now, maybe personally it's good and maybe it's great even. But it's no surprise that Aaron, in comparison to years past, his numbers went down. Well, the team's success was great. The Packers obviously went 13-3 last year and, went to the NFC Championship game. If there's any team in the NFL that, isn't as good as their record said it was definitely the Packers last year. I think they won either 6 or 7 games by, a score of 7 points or less, which is great, obviously, for last season, but that's not a sustainable winning, formula for the years and years on in the future. So, in all honesty, when I saw that they drafted Jordan Love, I immediately thought, well, when is he going to play? And it's no secret Jordan Love is not going to play this year. But I'm not even sure that Jordan Love will sit 2 years. A lot of people think that Jordan Love will sit the remainder of Aaron Rodgers' contract, which I believe still has 3 years left. I don't see Jordan Love sitting 3 years. When you draft a quarterback in the first round, you want to get him out there as soon as possible. I mean, look how great Patrick Mahomes was. He sat 1 year and they went with him right away. It would not surprise me at all if Aaron Rodgers and Matt LaFleur and the Green Bay Packers organization parted ways after this season and gave the keys to Jordan Love in 2021. I only see Jordan Love sitting at 2 years max. I really don't think that 3 years from now will be the first time we see Jordan Love. I think at an absolute max, Aaron Rodgers will play for the Packers this year and next season, and then he will be, they will go their separate ways. I don't see him retiring as a Green Bay Packer, as I just mentioned. So I'm going to put on my tinfoil hat and, predict some teams that Aaron Rodgers could potentially go to after this year or maybe even 2 years from now. But real quickly on Jordan Love, I like him as a prospect. He plays very similar to a young Aaron Rodgers, as I mentioned in my previous episode. And like Matt LaFleur said, he wants more dynamic playmaking. So I'm not going to be surprised if either A, Aaron Rodgers has some more dynamic playmaking this year, or if he's not going to do that, then eventually the Packers and Aaron Rodgers split. And there's a couple teams, like I just mentioned, I'm going to put on my tinfoil hat here and give some conspiracy theories on where I want to go. We're going to go, there's one team that's more unrealistic than the others. I have a list of 3 teams in front of me, and let's just get right into it here. The first team I thought of immediately, to be honest with you, was the San Francisco 49ers. Now, if you remember back when Aaron was drafted, the San Francisco 49ers held the first overall pick in the draft. Aaron Rodgers is obviously a California kid, went to Cal, wanted to be a San Francisco 49er so badly, and I think a lot of 49er fans also wanted Aaron Rodgers as well. Obviously, the 49ers took Alex Smith. Aaron dropped all the way to the 20s and was selected by Green Bay while Brett Favre was still there. But why wouldn't Aaron Rodgers want to return to California and potentially be a San Francisco 49er? And I know you're thinking I'm crazy. The 49ers just went to the playoffs, just went to the Super Bowl, NFC champions. Jimmy Garoppolo is pretty good. They have great weapons, great defense. I like Kyle Shanahan. Well, that exact reason. Out of all those things I just mentioned of how great the San Francisco 49ers are, the least thing that I said was Jimmy Garoppolo is okay. He is serviceable. He is an above-average quarterback. Don't get me wrong. This is not to slight Jimmy Garoppolo, but we have seen this in the past. Young teams with great defenses and a great young head coach make it to the Super Bowl and they fall off afterward. Look at the Falcons. Dan Quinn has fallen off ever since. He took the Falcons to the Super Bowl. Sean McVay missed the playoffs last year with the Rams. And now here we are with the 49ers, who obviously, great for them, went to the Super Bowl, unfortunately lost to the Kansas City Chiefs. But what's stopping them from regressing and taking a step back this year? The 49ers play in the hardest division in the NFL. They have the Rams breathing down their neck, who, in a down year for the Rams, like I just mentioned, they went 9-7. Right above them is the Seattle Seahawks with Russell Wilson, who I believe is a top 3, if not the second best quarterback in the entire NFL. They upgraded this offseason. DK Metcalf's only going to get better. Things like that. Not to mention the worst quote-unquote team in that division is the Arizona Cardinals, which will be in their second year of the new Cliff Kingsbury era. Kyler Murray could make a significant jump, similar to one that we've seen from, your first year to your second year, similar to like what Lamar Jackson just made. A lot of people have Kyler Murray as a potential MVP candidate this year. They obviously traded for DeAndre Hopkins. So I would not be surprised at all if just out of pure competition in their own division, the 49ers take a step back. I think they either went 13-3 this year or 14-12 or 14-2. I would not be surprised at all if the San Francisco 49ers took a step back and only won 10 games this season and didn't win the division. That maybe the Seahawks win the division this year, or who knows, maybe the Cardinals take a massive leap and win the division. And who is going to be blamed when that happens? It's certainly not going to be the defense led by Nick Bosa. That's an incredible defense coached by Robert Saleh. Absolutely incredible. It's not going to be the defense's fault. No one's going to blame Kyle Shanahan because he's a complete wizard when it comes to the offensive scheme. Is it the wide receiver talent? Nope. Is it the tight end talent? Nope. They got George Kittle. It's going to be on Jimmy Garoppolo. And if Jimmy Garoppolo fails to elevate the San Francisco 49ers, then that's going to be a problem. Jimmy Garoppolo, for me, falls into the category of quarterbacks who have a ceiling, who do not elevate the talent around them. When they are surrounded by supreme talent, and the talent is performing at their top level, there's a good defense, a good head coach, then you can go to a Super Bowl. You can win a Super Bowl, similar to Jared Goff, what Jared Goff did with the Rams. Great defense, incredible talent all around him, great head coach, everything worked perfectly, and they went to a Super Bowl. So it wouldn't surprise me at all if the Rams and the 49ers are really similar in that aspect, where the 49ers take a step back like I've been mentioning. And like I just said, the person who will be full front on the blame will be Jimmy Garoppolo. His contract is obviously not massive, but it's going towards the end of it in the last 2 years. Again, I would not surprise me at all if after this year Aaron Rodgers wants to leave the Packers. The 49ers could really think that they are an elite quarterback away from potentially starting an NFL dynasty. Could you imagine Aaron Rodgers on the 49ers with Mostert in the backfield, with Pettis, with Kittle, with Brandon Ayuk, who they just drafted, with a defense led by Nick Bosa, George Kittle on the offense, fantastic offensive line, they just traded for Trent Williams, and Kyle Shanahan as a coach? That would be the best roster that Aaron Rodgers has ever played with his entire career, so I won't be surprised with that one at all. Now, the second team I have is a team in the division because, again, we keep comparing this situation with Aaron Rodgers and Jordan Love to the Brett Favre-Aaron Rodgers situation many years ago. And obviously, Brett Favre decided to take his talents to the Minnesota Vikings and stay within division. I don't think that Aaron Rodgers would preferably lean this way if he had his choice, but who knows what options Aaron will actually have if he decided to leave the Packers. One that I think that could be open and he wanted to stay in the division is the Chicago Bears. I would absolutely love to see Aaron Rodgers go from the Green Bay Packers to the Chicago Bears in a year or two. Be absolutely incredible. I think everybody knows that Nick Foles is a great guy, pretty good quarterback, has his moments, especially when he's in a Philadelphia Eagle uniform. But I don't think any Chicago Bear fan thinks that Nick Foles is the long-term answer at quarterback there. I know Chicago Bears fans do not believe that Mitch Trubisky is the answer anymore. So it's going to be really interesting to see how much longer the Bears keep doing this quarterback carousel until they actually either draft one or find one in free agency. And it wouldn't surprise me again. After this year, the Bears have another rough year. They miss the playoffs, go 8-8, 9-7, 7-9, that mediocre tier, even though they have that great defense led by Khalil Mack. Watch out for the Chicago Bears. Aaron Rodgers and the Chicago Bears would make a lot of sense. Again, they have good weapons. Robinson, Tariq Cohen. I really like Matt Nagy as a head coach, as an offensive mind, obviously from the Andy Reid coaching tree, which seems to be the most fruitful out of any coaching trees in the entire NFL. Like I mentioned before, a fantastic defense. And it would be really cool to see Aaron kind of take that Brett Favre route of staying within the division, facing the Packers twice a year. And come on, how cool would it be to see a Monday Night Football game between Aaron Rodgers, Jordan Love, Aaron Rodgers in the Chicago Bear uniform? I would not be surprised with that at all. Again, Aaron has experience in the cold weather, the big moments. No Chicago has played in Chicago. big city for his brand. That would be probably the most realistic option I see out of any of the teams who could have a chance at landing Aaron Rodgers when he and the Green Bay Packers inevitably split. And the final team I want to talk about is the Los Angeles Rams. So I just got finished talking about the 49ers, how they would make a lot of sense. The Rams, in my opinion, would make even more sense and have a more realistic shot of Aaron going there. Aaron Rodgers is an absolute superstar. He's an icon. NFL, one of the many faces of the NFL, huge talking point for years and years. Where a better place to end his brand and even expand his brand and his reputation than going to the city of Los Angeles. Jared Goff, in my opinion, is just like Jimmy Garoppolo, like I mentioned before. Supreme talent, good head coach, everything going right, good defense. You can go to a Super Bowl and even win a Super Bowl with a Jared Goff, a Jimmy Garoppolo, as both of those teams almost did. But they have hit their ceiling. Jared Goff has hit his ceiling. We know what Jared Goff is like at his best, and we know he's not going to consistently be at this level. I took a look at Jared Goff's contract. It appears that, I believe, if I read this correctly, the guaranteed money of his current contract should be up at the end of this season, which means that the Rams could cut him or trade him without huge financial, repercussions or cap hit, things like that. Aaron Rodgers is obviously a California kid, went to the University of California. I could definitely see him being a Los Angeles Ram. Him and Sean McVay would make an incredible coaching quarterback duo. Obviously, they have Robert Woods on that team, Cooper Kupp, and the Rams have always had, a great defense led by Aaron Donald. They need to improve that offensive line. But I would love to absolutely adore to see Aaron Rodgers go to Los Angeles Rams in a year or two. That team probably makes the most sense. So if I had to rank, these three teams that I just listed on who I want to see, who I think makes sense, I think the team that if Aaron could pick any team in the world to play for right now, it'd be San Francisco. The team that I think that Aaron, would make the most sense in, besides San Francisco, would be the LA Rams, assuming Jimmy Garoppolo, doesn't fall off and they don't want to move around him. The Rams would make a lot of sense if they want to move off Jared Goff, but the most realistic option for me is going to be the Chicago Bears. That's assuming the 49ers don't want to move off Jimmy G. Maybe Jared Goff has a little bit of a resurgence, Rams get back to the playoffs, and there's no reason to, really move off from him. Then the Chicago Bears would make a lot of sense as well. And that would be a lot of fun to see him with the defense having Khalil Mack, Matt Nagy, things like that. And I absolutely could see that. But just to clarify, the Packers didn't draft Jordan Love to watch him sit for 3 years. There's only a few certain circumstances where a quarterback who was drafted high, first, second round, sit for multiple years. I'm talking more than 2. Jimmy Garoppolo did it, and he didn't end up being the starter of the New England Patriots. He was obviously moved to San Francisco. I'm pretty sure Aaron sat for only a year or 2. I don't expect Jordan Love to sit for 3+ years like some people believe. I think 2 years max, and it would not surprise me at all if the Green Bay Packers and Aaron Rodgers had a split. The relationship has never seemed really compatible. Aaron Rodgers is a California guy. He's a big brand. He's an icon. And it seems that he has been trying to mold himself into this Green Bay Packer, stereotypical what a Green Bay Packer person looks like, a player looks like, the Green Bay Packer system, the tough, the gritty. When Aaron's not like that, Aaron's cool. Aaron's California. Aaron's, icon. He's attractive, things like that. He makes more sense in a San Francisco 49 uniform or an LA Rams uniform than he does in a Green Bay Packer uniform by far. So it would not surprise me at all if we see Aaron Rodgers leave in the next 2 years, and I'm almost expecting it. All right, that's going to wrap it up for this segment. When we come back after this short break, I will be breaking down some NBA players that have the most to prove this playoffs when the season resumes on July 30th. And also don't forget, at the end of the show, I will be predicting the entire NBA playoffs, going round by round, matchup by matchup, who I think will be the NBA champion this year in this weird sort of shortened season. All right, we will be right back with the break after this break, and this is the GSMC Sports Podcast.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
All right, and we are back here at the GSMC Sports Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. Thank you so much for listening so far in this episode. So for my next segment, I'm going to give you guys some of the players in the NBA who are participating in the playoffs, who have the most to prove during this sort of shortened season playoffs. Like I mentioned, I believe in my last episode, I said even though that there's some players voicing their discomfort and, their concerns with the NBA and the playing in the bubble of Orlando and how the format's going to work, given everything going on in the world, I do believe that the NBA is going to play because a lot of the majority of the superstar athletes in the NBA want to play, and the NBA has always been a superstar-driven league. LeBron came out, said he's playing, Kawhi's going to play, Giannis is going to play, Harden's going to play, people like that. And I think the league goes as its stars go, so I really do believe the NBA is going to get this season in starting July 30th. So I want to give you guys some of the players that I think have the most to prove during this playoffs in terms of their legacy, in terms of their reputation, their accolades, things like that. So let's get right into it. Number one's a pretty obvious one, and it's kind of, it's not necessarily the Houston Rockets overall, but specifically James Harden and Russell Westbrook. James Harden and Russell Westbrook both have the reputation of being outstanding regular season players, they're both ball-dominant guards. They're obviously friends, so they've been sharing the ball, you could say, more. But they're ball-dominant guards who are awesome in the regular season, are known as stat padders, but when it gets to the playoffs, they do not perform at that level, and they haven't won anything. Both have not won a championship. Both of them have won MVPs. James Harden has scoring titles. Russell Westbrook has the triple-double records. Both of them will surely be Hall of Famers, but both of them are not considered the greatest at their position, Russell Westbrook isn't in the conversation as greatest point guard of all time, or even really, like top 5 greatest point guards. James Harden isn't in, the discussion of is he a top 3 shooting guard of all time? Is he one of the best offensive players of all time? Because of their lack of championships and their lack of, team success. But they obviously have great individual success, but not team success. So this, for me, is a two birds for one stone thing where they can change the narrative together. If the Houston Rockets can win a championship this year, that would change everything for the reputation of James Harden. That would change everything for the reputation of Russell Westbrook. They wouldn't be known as these great regular season performers with great stats, but weren't clutch, weren't good in the big moment, didn't win the big game, didn't win the championship. Do I think the Rockets will necessarily win a championship? No, and I'll get to that in my final segment when I predict the playoffs. But they're probably the biggest out of anybody in the playoffs. Besides maybe LeBron James, who I won't mention because I've been talking about him recently in my other episodes. I won't be mentioning him. But maybe outside of LeBron James, James Harden and Russell Westbrook definitely have maybe the most to prove out of anybody in this playoffs to try to change their narrative about their legacy. All right, how about Jimmy Butler? Jimmy Butler is a really interesting player who, has always been talented. He's a grinder. He didn't come into this league as an offensive juggernaut. He was more a defensive specialist when he was with the Chicago Bulls. Obviously started to become, the best player on the Bulls, both offensively and defensively. Bulls sort of went into a full rebuild mode. Jimmy voiced his, concern, was obviously traded to the Minnesota Timberwolves. That stint only lasted about a year and a couple of months before, obviously, that very public breakup, with the practices about him, not getting along with Karl Anthony Towns and Tom Thibodeau, the coach, and Andrew Wiggins claiming they didn't work hard enough. Eventually, we all know the story. Jimmy Butler was then traded to the Philadelphia 76ers. He elevated that team. Then the rumors came about. He's not getting along with Ben Simmons. He wants to be the number one option instead of Ben Simmons or Joel Embiid. He's the bad teammate. He's not the leader that everyone needs him to be. And obviously when it came to time in free agency, the Sixers felt so strongly that, Jimmy wasn't working with the chemistry and wasn't working with Ben Simmons, that there have been reports that Philadelphia 76ers didn't even offer Jimmy Butler the 5-year max contract extension that he was eligible for. Instead, Jimmy took his talents to South Beach and went to the Miami Heat, who have really embraced his grinder, lead by example, work ethic type attitude, and it's obviously worked out for the Heat. They're top 4 in the East this year. They're having a great season, sort of their resurgence. But Jimmy Butler has something to prove. Jimmy Butler has never been considered to be able to be the best player on a championship team, really the best player on a conference championship level team even. Jimmy Butler has always been seen as, not a superstar, a second-tier player, a great B option, but not number one, as this bad teammate, this bad leader. nothing that, would be, beneficial to him. He doesn't elevate a team. It's all about him. Things like that. Now, if Jimmy Butler and the Miami Heat, won a playoff series or two, made it to the conference finals, maybe even made it to an NBA finals, I don't think they can win a championship by any stretch of the imagination. But unlike the Rockets, I think the Rockets and, James Harden and Russell Westbrook, for them to change the narrative, they need to get to an NBA finals or even win an NBA finals to really change that narrative. For Jimmy Butler just to prove that he is one of the top players in the NBA, a superstar, not a second option to anybody, the number one option on a really good contending team. If the Heat can make it to the conference finals, I think that narrative would change for Jimmy Butler, and I think it's absolutely possible. The Heat are a great defensive team. They have shooters, Tyler Hero, Duncan Robinson, surrounded by one of the best up-and-coming bigs, Bam Adebayo. If Jimmy Butler can really lead that team to an Eastern Conference Finals appearance against maybe the Bucks or the Celtics, that could really change the narrative that Jimmy is an elite player. It can be the best player on a championship team. Not to mention, I think the rest really helps Jimmy Butler. He's a veteran. He's older. He's in his 30s. This hiatus that the NBA has taken, he's in great shape. That could also benefit Jimmy Butler as well. All right, next up I have for team, this is actually an entire team that really needs to prove themselves, and change the narrative about them, and that's the Philadelphia 76ers. The 76ers are one of the most talented teams in the NBA, have two of the, most rising stars in the league. Joel Embiid, one of the top centers in the league, if not the top center. Ben Simmons, who, if you remember early in his career, was getting Magic Johnson comparisons, 6'10" point guard, one of the best passers in the league. Obviously the jokes and the memes that he can't shoot and everything like that. But nevertheless, Ben Simmons has always been a good player. And towards the end of the regular season, before it got postponed, the Sixers were on a complete downward spiral. There are reports that the chemistry, on court between Ben Simmons, Joel Embiid weren't great. Joel Embiid was starting to flirt with, maybe potential different options. If you remember, there was an Instagram post between Jimmy Butler of the Heat, Joel Embiid of the 76ers, flirting about a potential Joel Embiid potentially leaving the 76ers. There are rumors that Brett Brown is going to be relieved of his duties at the end of the season, that he's going to get fired. All this circulates around one thing. The Philadelphia 76ers, since getting Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons, have never reached their full potential of a championship team. They haven't even been to a championship. They haven't even been to a conference championship. And that narrative needs to change, because it won't surprise me at all if after another year or two of the Philadelphia 76ers being dysfunctional but talented, make it to the playoffs, get bounced in the first or second round, that either A, Joel Embiid's going to want to leave in free agency or via trade, or the 76ers might break it up themselves. Management, the general manager, might decide that it's best to surround Ben Simmons with shooters or get rid of Ben Simmons and have Joel Embiid the sole focus of the team, which would really be a waste of talent, because we've seen how good a great point guard and a great center duo can be throughout NBA history. And the 76ers obviously have that potential with Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid. And yes, I know the on-court fit doesn't make a lot of sense considering Ben Simmons' lack of shooting, Joel Embiid's paint-dominant style, and Ben Simmons always wanted to drive and kick almost, sort of like how LeBron was in his early career. This narrative is one of the biggest narratives in the NBA, and that's the 76ers never reach their full potential. They never be what they're supposed to be. And for the 76ers to change that, similar to the Houston Rockets, I think they need to get to an NBA Finals or win an NBA Finals to change that narrative. I don't think, winning a 2 series will make that enough. We've seen what the 76ers are. They can beat, they can win a first-round playoff matchup, maybe even a second-round playoff matchup. But can they get to the Eastern Conference Finals? Can they get to the championship? Can they win a championship? Those are the things that really, really define the 76ers and how they could change this narrative surrounding them. And if they don't, I'm not going to be surprised. Brett Brown could get fired at the end of the season. Joel Embiid could request a trade. Philadelphia management could just decide, this isn't working on court. We need to move on. We need to split the duo up. Something like that. Wouldn't surprise me at all. So they're one of the teams, they're the only team on the list that I think needs to change that narrative. Next up, Giannis Antetokounmpo. Now, Giannis has a perfect reputation in the league right now. Absolute dominant player. A lot of people think he should win MVP this year. I would personally go with LeBron James. But, the thing with Giannis is everybody likes him. He's super talented, like I mentioned. MVP, could win it again this year. The narrative hasn't begun to start yet, but I think if this year doesn't work out for them, it could really start. Giannis Antetokounmpo has not won multiple playoff series before. Oh, actually, no. Maybe he has. He went to the Eastern Conference Finals, I believe. Giannis Antetokounmpo has never made it to an NBA Finals, despite being an MVP, despite being one of the best players in the league. There's been, some talk that he flops in the big moment, that he doesn't elevate his team in the big moment, that he can be stopped in the playoffs. I believe the Celtics have eliminated him twice. Not last year, but I think the 2 years prior to that, he had been eliminated by the Boston Celtics. And that narrative hasn't really escalated to the level of a James Harden or a Russell Westbrook necessarily, or even like a Chris Paul, that they don't, play well in the big moment. But if the Bucks don't make it to a championship this year, that could certainly happen. And there has been talks, I'll get into this for a little bit, that Giannis Antetokounmpo, who was eligible for the Supermax after the season, might not sign it. He might, explore his options with other teams. There have been teams like the Golden State Warriors, Toronto Raptors, Miami Heat. They've expressed interest in signing Giannis Antetokounmpo in 2021. And one of the reasons Giannis might consider that is to change that narrative that he hasn't won anything. Let's say over the next 2 seasons, the Bucks don't make it to an NBA championship and they don't win an NBA championship. Then I really do believe that narrative's going to pick up that Giannis, is this great player but hasn't won anything, hasn't proved anything yet, similar to the narrative around James Harden right now. And he might win the MVPs and the Eastern Conference Player of the Month and the Eastern Conference Player of the Week and, lead the league, in efficiency and points and rebounds and everything like that. But at the end of the day, the NBA, more than any other sport, is a rings-driven league when it comes to arguments, when it comes to greatness, when it comes to debates. And it would not surprise me at all that if this narrative really starts to pick up with Giannis over the next 2 seasons, that he really does consider leaving to a Golden State Warriors to be surrounded by Clay and Steph, to a Miami Heat to join Jimmy Butler and, Tyler Hero and the shooters around them and the great coach Eric Spoelstra, or even to a Toronto Raptors. Makes sense. We saw what they did with Kawhi. The player development in Toronto is second to none. Join Pascal Siakam, join Fred VanVleet, things like that. And it's no surprise, there's also the argument that Giannis is too big for the Milwaukee Bucks. The Milwaukee Bucks are not a powerhouse, historic organization. They've been around a long time, but they don't have the championship pedigree that a Lakers do, a Miami Heat do, a Golden State Warriors have, or even the big market, big city that Toronto is. Things like that play a huge factor with Giannis. There's going to be teams that are going to be begging him, pleading him to at least take a meeting. Teams like the Knicks, teams like the Heat, Warriors, like I mentioned before, and it's going to be hard if Giannis hasn't won a championship in 2 years, when the media and the fan base is all saying he hasn't won anything, he's not good enough in the big moment, the Bucks haven't surrounded him with good enough talent, he hasn't made an NBA Finals. Then you could really see that narrative, really manifest itself into a potential departure between Giannis and the Milwaukee Bucks. We saw it with LeBron in 2010 when LeBron hadn't won an NBA championship. He had been to one, but he lost in Cleveland. The rumors that Cleveland's not surrounding the talent. LeBron hasn't won anything. He's this great player, but no championship. He obviously, let that narrative, surround him, and he bought into it. So he decided to go to the Miami Heat. Things like that could absolutely happen to Giannis as well in 2021. And finally, the last team that I have to prove themselves, besides, I didn't mention, and I won't mention the Lakers and LeBron James because it's obvious they have to prove themselves to win the championship, achieve greatness. LeBron's chasing Michael Jordan. The final team I have on this list that I think needs to prove themselves is Kawhi Leonard and the Los Angeles Clippers. Now, you could say that they don't have anything to prove because it's their first year in this new era of the Kawhi PG era, but in my opinion, they actually have a lot to prove. So, almost as much as the Lakers. The Los Angeles Clippers have gone all in. They took Kawhi Leonard, they took Paul George, they bought into the load management style, let Kawhi and PG rest, have an outstanding bench. Top to bottom, I think the Los Angeles Clippers have the best and the deepest roster. Doc Rivers is a championship level coach. And for the Clippers, it's really championship or bust. Even if they lost to the Lakers in a Western Conference, finals, or even lost to the Bucks or Celtics in an NBA championship, that would be considered a failure and really a shot at Kawhi and Paul George especially. Paul George has the narrative that James Harden has, that Russell Westbrook has, that he does not perform in the playoffs, that he, shies away in the big moment. Kawhi is obviously known as this clutch, great NBA champion. And, and if you remember at the end of last season, once Kawhi led Toronto to the, NBA championship and won, a lot of people considered Kawhi as the best player in the NBA. Now, let's say the Clippers lose to the Lakers in the Western Conference Finals, don't win a championship. That goes away. All of a sudden, it's Paul George doesn't perform in the playoffs. That narrative kicks back up. And is Kawhi the best player in the NBA? Is he better than Giannis? Is he better than LeBron James? Things like that. Also, when it's just a complete bust, especially if they lose to the Los Angeles Lakers. The Clippers were this huge moment of, Los Angeles is going to become a Clippers town, Clippers over Lakers, everything like that. And if you lose to the quote-unquote big brother Lakers, then that really hurts, your narrative, your establishment, your, organization really top to bottom. And the Clippers roster is only going to get older. Lou Williams is only going to get older, Montrezl Harrell could leave at the end of the season due to free agency and money. You never know what could happen in the NBA landscape. So it's championship or bust for the Los Angeles Clippers, and I think they have a lot to prove. That's going to do it for this segment. When we get back on the other side of this quick, short break, I will be breaking down the NBA playoffs. I've been hinting it all show. Who I think will win the NBA playoffs, the NBA championship this year. I'll go matchup by matchup, East and West, tell you who I think will win and how many games it'll take them to win. We'll be right back after this break. It's the GSMC Sports Podcast.
Are you looking for help for your fantasy football team? Check out the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Get today's best advice on who to start, who to sit, even who you should draft. From sleeper picks to red hot lineups, they got it all covered for you. That's gsmcpodcast.com/fantasy-football-podcast. We'll cover traditional leagues, dynasty, PPR, even IDP leagues. When you need fantasy help, there's just one show to hit up. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit gsmcpodcast.com for more info.
Alright, and we are back here at the GSMC Sports Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. We're here with the last segment of the day where I'm going to be predicting the entire NBA playoffs, matchup by matchup, round by round, who I believe will take the East, who I believe will take the West, and eventually the NBA championship. So let's just get right into it. Let's start with the East. I don't think 1 through 8, the standings are going to move at all. Even though there are, those 8 regular season games and obviously the Washington Wizards were invited back, I do not believe that the standings will change at all. So let's just get right into it. The first matchup would be the Milwaukee Bucks versus the Orlando Magic. I have the Bucks. Clean sweep here. 4 games. The Bucks offense and really Giannis Antetokounmpo would just be way too much for the Orlando Magic defense to handle. So I would give a clean sweep here for Milwaukee in 4 games. The second matchup I have here is the Toronto Raptors versus the Brooklyn Nets. If Kevin Durant obviously wasn't going to play, isn't going to play. If he was, it'd be a completely different story. And obviously, if Kyrie Irving was playing, I'd actually say that maybe the Nets could win a game or 2 against Toronto. But since no Kyrie Irving, no Kevin Durant, and Spencer Dinwiddie is really the only, consistent offensive performer of 18 plus on that team, I would have to say that the Raptors, due to their defensive level, their championship, experience, their veterans, Pascal Siakam's emergence, Fred VanVleet's emergence, that I would say that the Raptors are probably going to sweep the Brooklyn Nets in 4 games. Next up here, we have the Boston Celtics versus the Philadelphia 76ers. I just talked about in the last segment how Philly really does need to change the narrative, how they need to reach their potential. But again, I just don't trust Philly to do that. I don't trust the chemistry between Ben Simmons, the point guard, Joel Embiid, the center. I think Philly lacks a ton of shooters. They need way more shooting in a league that is shooter dominant. I know they have Al Horford, and I know he has some experience against the Celtics. He obviously played for the Celtics for, I think, 4 or 5, maybe even 6 years. So that could maybe help. But at the end of the day, I don't think Philadelphia is athletic enough to deal with the longness, the length, the athleticism of the Boston Celtics, like what they have in Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, where they can just throw different guys at you, throw different matchups at you to completely throw you off. I also think Kemba Walker will benefit from this rest, given he is a veteran. He's had kind of a hot and cold season for the Celtics so far, but when it comes to playoff time, I really do believe he will ramp it up and he will improve overall. The next matchup I have is the Miami Heat versus the Indiana Pacers. There's a little bit of a rivalry here. If you guys remember, before the hiatus started, TJ Warren of the Pacers and Jimmy Butler of the Miami Heat got into a little bit. I think the Miami Heat would win this in about 5 games. I don't trust the Indiana Pacers. They haven't had a lot of experience with their full roster, with Oladipo back, Malcolm Brogdon back. The rest has done both of these teams well. Both the Miami Heat and the Pacers were dealing with injuries. Brogdon was hurt for the Pacers, and for the Heat, Myers Leonard was hurt. Tyler Hero was hurt for a considerable amount of time as well. So that will do, both of these teams at good, healthy strength will do wonders. I just think the Heat are a little bit younger, a little bit faster, a little bit more, defensively tough than the Pacers are. Also, the whole X factor of this series would be Victor Oladipo. He came back from his, devastating leg injury, came back, wasn't really to his top performance self. I think he only averaged like 14 points a game. If Victor Oladipo comes back from this hiatus and is dropping 23, 24, 25, then we could see a different outcome in this series. But for now, I have the Miami Heat winning this series probably in 5 or 6 games. Now let's get to the second round of the East. So the first matchup would be the Milwaukee Bucks versus the Miami Heat. Now, the Miami Heat have beaten the Milwaukee Bucks every single time they played this season. I believe they're 2-0 or even maybe 3-0 against each other this season. However, I do think the Milwaukee Bucks would eventually win this series. I think the Miami Heat would be a tough out because of Jimmy Butler's toughness, because of the shooting and the youth and the athleticism of Bam Adebayo that the Miami Heat have. And I do think that the Miami Heat have the defensive capabilities of potentially, no one can stop Giannis Antetokounmpo, but slow him down, not let him get to 35, limit him to 20, 22. I think Bam Adebayo could be that defender. So I'm going to say the Bucks are going to beat the Heat, but I'm going to give them a 6 games. I don't think it's a clean sweep. I don't even think it's 5 games. I think 6 games is a good number where I could see the Bucks beating the Miami Heat. I think eventually Giannis will just be too strong, too powerful, and I don't think he will allow the Milwaukee Bucks to get bounced in the second round. The other second round series for the East would then be the Raptors versus the Celtics. Now, this is a really interesting and would be a really underrated fun matchup. Both of these teams are super long, super athletic, play incredible defense. However, I would have to give the slight edge to the Boston Celtics because of the Jason Tatum factor, the Kemba Walker factor, and Jaylen Brown. I think the Celtics just have more offensive firepower than the Raptors, and I know the Raptors play fantastic defense, but so do the Celtics. So I think in a really low, gritty scoring series, I think the Celtics would win in about 6 or maybe even 7 games against the Toronto Raptors, which leads us to the Eastern Conference Finals, where a lot of people are predicting the Milwaukee Bucks versus the Boston Celtics. And I told you guys in the last episode when making my tier list, it would not surprise me at all if the Boston Celtics knocked out the Milwaukee Bucks once again, and I'm going to pick it with this series. I believe in 7 games, the Boston Celtics would beat the Milwaukee Bucks in a playoff series. The Celtics have experience guarding Giannis. They always have Giannis' number. They lock up Chris Middleton. The length and athleticism of the Boston Celtics, I keep mentioning it. Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, those guys can lock down defend. They can throw mismatches at Giannis. They can disrupt him. They can be the ones that force Giannis to rely on his teammates. And when that happens, usually the Milwaukee Bucks don't step up to the plate. Chris Middleton doesn't step up to the plate in the playoffs. Eric Bledsoe doesn't step up to the plate in the playoffs. So I would say that the Boston Celtics series, my first upset so far, would beat the Milwaukee Bucks in a 7-game series. It would actually go to the distance to 7 games. Now let's move to the Western Conference. In the first round, a bunch of teams were invited, obviously, to participate in the 8-game regular season and the play-in tournament for that 8th seed in the West. I actually would take the Pelicans to take this. So right now it currently stands is that the Grizzlies have the 8th seed, the Pelicans, Kings, and Blazers, I believe, and I think also even the Phoenix Suns, technically, are all going to compete for that last final spot with the play-in tournament. I'm going to give it to the Pelicans because of the Zion Williams factor. Zion will be refreshed, he will be ready, he will be healthy, and the momentum is really building for the Pelicans to make the playoffs. Everybody wants to see Zion Williamson. Everyone wants to see the youthful, energetic New Orleans Pelicans. I think that their youth with Lonzo Ball, Josh Hart, Brandon Ingram even, and then obviously Zion will help them with fresh legs when they go against some of these veteran teams. Not only that, they have a good veteran to rely on. JJ Redick is an underrated member of that team. They will need his shooting big time in the playoffs. And JJ Redick is a clutch player. And I really do believe at the end of the play-in tournament in the 8-game regular season, the New Orleans Pelicans will be the team with the 8th seed, which means that they would face the Los Angeles Lakers in the first round, and I believe the Lakers would take it. I don't think it'd be a clean sweep. I think Zion would have a big game, and I think one of the games the Pelicans could steal maybe in overtime. But I think the Lakers in 5 would beat the New Orleans Pelicans there, but the future would be bright for the Pelicans 100%. The second matchup would be the Los Angeles Clippers versus the Dallas Mavericks. Now, again, I'm not going to say that the Clippers are going to completely sweep this series. I think they would win in maybe 6 games, 5, at the lowest, but I think really a 6-game series. Luka Doncic is absolutely incredible, and I really do believe he could be the best player in the NBA for a long time after, LeBron James is gone and maybe Giannis Antetokounmpo gets a little bit older. Luka Doncic is the future of the league. He could be the future face of the league in my opinion. He's absolutely incredible, averaging maybe like close to 30 points a game as a 21-year-old, 20-year-old. Absolutely ridiculous stuff. And I do think he would have big games in, the entire series, but I think he would be able to lead the Mavericks to steal 2 games against the Los Angeles Clippers. So I'm going to give the Clippers the win for the series, but it would take 6 games. Next up is Nuggets-Rockets, which is a really intriguing, awesome series. I think the Nuggets are just a little too young. I still think they're one piece away to really make noise in the playoffs. And I know that the Houston Rockets, as I talked about in my last segment, aren't known for those top playoff performances, James Harden, Russell Westbrook. But I really do believe that Harden and Westbrook will step up in the playoffs and they will make some noise in the Western Conference this season. So I'm going to choose an upset here. I think the Rockets would beat the Nuggets in 7 games. The last matchup of the first round for the Western Conference is the Jazz versus the Thunder, which I don't think any of these series are boring, but that would probably be the most boring. I'm going to go with another upset here. I'm actually going to go with the Thunder. The Jazz obviously do not have Bogdanović for the series. I don't necessarily trust Mike Conley to return to form. Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert, there's obviously some sort of conflict there with the whole coronavirus thing. Will they be back to what they want to be, what they were? So I'm actually going to give the Thunder, led by veteran Chris Paul, and their veteran leadership and their youth, their length with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Steven Adams would be a good, defensive pairing against Rudy Gobert. He could really, if anyone can match up physically with Rudy Gobert, it's Steven Adams. So I'm going to give the Thunder that series in 7 games. Let's move to the second round. Lakers versus Thunder. Again, like I mentioned last episode, Thunder are a nice story. I think they can make some noise. I said they could win a first round series, but I don't think they make it farther than that. That's what I have them doing here. I think the Lakers would beat the Thunder in 5. I think Chris Paul would have a great game or 2. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander would have a great game, and they could steal one from the Lakers, but it wouldn't be much more than that. So I'm going to give the Lakers over the Thunder in 5 games. Next up, Clippers, Rockets. Similar to, the Thunder-Lakers series, I think this would be 5-6 games max. Well, I love Russell Westbrook and James Harden, and I think they're really out here to prove and to, destroy that narrative that they don't win the big moments. I think the Clippers defense will just be too much for the Rockets to handle, and the Rockets are not a deep team by any stretch of the imagination, and they're probably going against the deepest team in the league, the Los Angeles Clippers. So it's just a mismatch all around. So I'm going to say the Clippers would win that in 5 or 6 games. And now we head to the Western Conference Finals, where we have the Lakers and we have the Clippers. If there was no hiatus, if there was no break at all, where the veterans had some time and ability to rest, I would have picked the Clippers in 7 games. But instead, I'm going to go with the Lakers here because LeBron will be refreshed, because AD will be refreshed, everybody will be healthy. The Lakers are one of the older teams in the league. JaVale McGee, Avery Bradley, guys like that will be fully healed, fully rested, healthy. They'll be in shape, and I really do believe that this is the Lakers' year. This is LeBron James' year. This whole year has been lining up for the Lakers to return to dominance and LeBron to return to dominance, and I think the stars are really aligning that way. So I'm going to take the Lakers over the Clippers in 7, which would conclude this with a Celtics-Lakers finals, which is absolutely awesome to see. We haven't had one of those since, I think, 2008, 2009, something like that, where it was Lakers versus Celtics. So that's really awesome to see. One of the most historic rivalries in really sports overall, and one of maybe the best sports rivalry ever. I would love to see this series, Jason Tatum versus LeBron James, Kemba Walker, Anthony Davis. The stars would align. And I know I'm going to go with the Lakers here, but this is not an easy series for the Lakers by any stretch of the imagination. A lot of people believe that the toughest series that the Lakers would have would be against the Clippers, and I agree with you, but that doesn't mean necessarily that the Lakers and Celtics wouldn't go to 7 games. I think in 6 or 7 games in a hard-fought series, the Lakers would beat the Celtics. I think the Celtics are just a little too young for the Lakers, even though I absolutely love Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown. I really do believe that the Los Angeles Lakers, it is their year, it is their time. LeBron's going to return to his king form, both offensively and defensively, and the Lakers are going to return to prevalence. So that is it. That is my NBA playoff predictions as of right now. I really do believe it's the Lakers' year. Stars are aligning for it. That is going to conclude today's episode. Thank you guys so much for listening. I really do appreciate it. Make sure to subscribe to the show, leave us a 5-star review, and follow us on all social media platforms. We love to interact with you guys. Thank you so much for listening yet again, and have a fantastic day, and I will see you in the next episode.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.